So welcome everybody, I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield and Fractured Colony because, well, as usual for the time being right now, I'm here doing live streams to promote my Kickstarter for Fractured Colony, which is a set of 3D printable gaming miniatures. You can learn more over at fracturedcolony.com or follow down in the link below to the description for said Kickstarter. It's going to be live for, 2 more weeks or so, something like that. And today, what I am working on is I've got a kind of a sort of continuation of what I've been doing the past few weeks, where I'm actually working on miniatures from the next set. But this time, instead of building a miniature per se, I am working on a terrain feature, which is going to be some defensive walls for like a sci-fi miniature base. So let's jump over here to the screen where I've got Blender loaded up. And if you've been watching on and off for the past few weeks, you probably recognize at least parts of this guy. This is the SAM site, and I've mostly completed it. I say mostly because I'm happy with what I see here in terms of a miniature, but I haven't 3D printed anything yet because I'm going to worry about this after I deliver the current Kickstarter. And things may change because usually things always change once I get to the 3D printing process. So I've got this guy loaded in here right now just because it's going to give me some relative scale for the defensive walls. And that's what I'm going to start working on. I say relative scale because this miniature right here is still not actually been scaled to whatever its final size is. It's technically right now 4 millimeters by about 3.5 millimeters. So we'll fix that later on, but that's, long time, much further down the pipeline, we'll say. So let me go ahead and start working on the walls, and for that I am going to just start with a good old-fashioned cube. Not the default cube, that had to go away a long time ago. Just a normal cube. And I'm going to kind of scale this, like I said, relative to the size of this particular terrain feature or miniature terrain feature I've already built. It's something like that. And also, you're going to see in a moment here, is I am going to kind of do a lot of mirror modifiers. So therefore, I can modify one side of the miniature and have things happen to the other. And I also want to think a little bit about the standard size of this wall segment because ideally, if you can build fortifications with this on your battlefield, they should be able to more or less connect to each other. So I kind of have to think a little bit about that. I could probably mess with that later on, but I didn't do any math ahead of time, so I'm just going to start modeling and I'll worry about that later on. But at some point I got to actually think about that. So that is probably a fairly decent wall segment given the size. I might have to end up cutting it in half because it's probably going to be too big for a 3D printer bed. Because ideally the SAM site back here is, when it's finally modeled up, it's going to be pretty close to what your maximum 3D printer bed would be, about 7.5 inches. That way it's 7.5 by 7.5. Therefore, you get a pretty broad coverage of most printers out there. So let me actually make this wall segment a little bit smaller. We'll actually make it width-wise similar to the SAM site. And then the height I can scale up. And this guy is probably several months away from release, so I'm not super worried about details right now. So I'm going to say something like that. We could probably make it even a little bit taller. Obviously, the SAM site would not be right behind the wall. Once again, it's a sizing reference. Okay, so I've got a rough shape here. First thing I'm going to do now is jump into edit mode, and I am going to do a radio cut right down the middle. That's Control R. And then I'm going to delete half of it. So I'm going to just delete these two vertices over here. And this is where that whole mirror modifier comes in. So I'm going to jump over to our modifiers tab. We're going to go to generate and choose mirror. And that looks a little bit funky. Okay. Apparently I moved the radial cut after I did it. So let me make sure that we're going to go ahead and get these as close as possible. Do I have, I do have merge on. So now I've got to clean up the mess that I made. The better option is to just do it right from the start. Let me do this. I don't know what I did. I honestly don't know what I did, to be honest with you. Okay, so radial cut right down the middle. Up, I just shifted it again. Okay, there we go. That time I got it right down the middle. Let's go back and add our mirror modifier. All right, there we go. Bit of a rough start there. And if you are watching live, feel free to ask any questions about Blender. I will go ahead and do my best to try to answer them. I want to give the walls just a little bit of a slant, just because I think that looks kind of cooler. And then I want to start building some details. So we're going to do one more loop cut over here. Yes, because I want to do like a kind of a cut in at 1/2 and 3/4 of the wall, because I think that might look kind of cool. I'll show you what I mean in a moment. So for that, I'm going to do one more loop cut there, one more there. And I am going to use an add-on here called Measure It. I believe it still comes with the later versions of Blender. I'm running 4.2. It may not be fully supported if you're watching this really far in the future, because I'm not entirely sure if it is technically fully supported of 4.2, but it still kind of works. And what it does is it lets you select 2 vertices. I can identify them as a segment, and I can, as you see there, it just measures the distance between them. So that's 0.51, and that's actually quite helpful when it comes to doing some modeling here. If you need to get exact sizes between 2 things, and the normal Blender operations don't necessarily allow that. So we'll add one over here too. And I need to add one more loop cut over here, and you'll see why I'm going to do that in a minute. And we'll do one more segment there. All right, so I want to take this segment and this segment, and if so let me just do it nice, and I'm just scaling them closer together. Blender's going to be kind of happy about that. Let's just do 0.05. It's kind of an arbitrary size. And then I will also put this other loop cut I made right at the very end. We're going to drop that one at 0.05 away from the center. And you can see the mirror modifier is putting one over there. Okay, so what I was talking about, that kind of, but I don't know what I called it, something. Recess cut or something. I am going to now select the points that kind of make up the middle here, the middle of the recess cuts. I said select all of that. And then I'm just going to kind of move those backwards a little bit. So all that's really doing is just adding a very simple little easy to 3D print texture to the wall, because that kind of thing would be pretty nice for 3D printing. I think what I'll do now is add some more just random structural features to the front faces of the wall, because science fiction. I'm not sure why I'm talking on this monitor. You guys are at the camera there. So yeah, so I'm going to add some more details like here and then here. And that's, once again, just going to be a lot of loop cuts. We'll do 2 there, and then we'll do 2 over here also. And I moved them around. Okay, there we go. I want to do some more measurements here to set the sizes so I know they're going to be equal. Okay. So let's merge these, or not merge, I mean, let's move these closer together. I'm kind of using the numbers just so I know they're going to be equal sizes here and there. Otherwise, I'm kind of just visually looking at things. So let's do 0.25. That looks pretty good. And I will also make this set of loop cuts over here also 2.5. And what I'm thinking is I want to add a little bit of 3D detail that's fairly friendly to 3D printing with hopefully no supports. So let's do a loop cut, drop it like right around there. And then I'll do another loop cut and just kind of visually say that looks pretty good. Then let me take these two faces and I want to extrude them out. What did oh, I can just do that. Okay. We'll get to that. We'll figure out a size in a moment. And then I'm also going to do the same thing up here for these two faces. That is not extrusion, that's extrusion. All right, I'm going to do a few more measurement lines. Let me just, do I need to, I can clear out some of the original few. I don't need those. I actually can get rid of all of these because they're not going to change the width of anything anymore. We'll put a segment there and then a segment down here. And I want to make sure that this segment and this segment are the same size. And it's probably sticking out a little bit too much. So let me select, yeah, we'll just select all these and I'll refine it in a moment here. I'm going to go to 0.17 and then let me deselect that one and we'll drop this one out to move it out to 0.17. Okay. Now you're thinking, how is this 3D printer friendly or no support 3D printer friendliness? Because it's like there's obviously a big face there. Well, what I'm going to do is actually start merging some vertices. So let's merge at last, merge at last. So it's going to be not a block sticking out, but an angle. And if that angle is steep enough, 3D printers should generally be able to print that without support. And it's like, it's approximately 45 degrees for 3D printers, because it obviously varies from 3D printer to 3D printer, but about 45 degrees if it's a steeper angle than that. So, like that's 45 degrees and that's like 70 or something. That's usually printable without supports. And I may need to change that once we get to the whole 3D printing phase. Okay. So there we go, just some kind of random little bits of detail. And what I probably, I just had an idea. Let me undo that. Let me bring this back. Now this is going to get a little messy. What would be kind of cooler is actually make this whole thing like one piece, right? So it's going to be an extended piece out here, but I'm going to reintroduce those angles in a moment. But this way I still have a little bit of like actual just extra stuff sticking out. Now, the problem, of course, we've got some overlapping faces and things going on here because right now this point is made up of two vertices. So let's start by fixing that. So for that, we're going to go and do mesh cleanup and then merge by distance. And right now it removed 0 vertices down here. And there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 16 vertices get removed. So I'm going to keep increasing the size over here by a factor of about 10. So we're going to go to 0.001, still 0 vertices. So let me go 0.01, 4 vertices. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 24 vertices is not correct. Okay, let's just do this. We're going to do the manual way. The numbers weren't making sense in my head, so I'm just going to merge them manually, and then we'll deal with the non-manifold in a moment. Everyone's favorite non-manifold vertices will be coming out here in just a moment because I'm currently creating some internal faces, and yeah, 3D printers don't like that, but I'll talk about that here in about 10 seconds. So if I were to go ahead now and do select by trait non-manifold, you see all those are selected. Non-manifold is Blender's fancy way saying you've got a 3D structure here that can exist in the computer, but it really can't exist in the real world. And the reason for that in this case is fairly straightforward. There's an internal face. So it thinks that if I click right here, you see that there's a little rectangle selected. It thinks that's like a outside of an object, but it's an outside of an object that's wholly contained within a real object, which of course that doesn't make sense in the real world. So what I have to do is just go here and select all of these 4 faces and then choose delete faces. And I know that that was the issue just because I've done this kind of a thing with this type of modeling a bunch before, and it's a little bit of experience to know that. I do have a video on that. If you search my channel for non-manifold vertices, I kind of show you some different tricks you can use to figure out what the actual issue is at the moment. Okay, so let me go back to solid view here, and what I want to do now is select these guys, and we're going to move this back in so it's something like that. So it still gets kind of that weird angle design that I wanted to go for some weird reason, but it now also means that there's still some details sticking out on the front of the wall, which is just kind of neat because it makes things a little bit more interesting. Let me try one more idea to make things look a little bit flashier, because I got some more work to do up here. Actually, let me actually do a little bit more work, and then I'll play around with some things that might make stuff look a little bit flashier. All right, so let's just add like a little spire. Oh, let me select that too. We're going to make some little spires up here. On a totally random funny note, I'm drinking out of a little beer flight glass because before I jump on this live stream, I'm usually down in my basement riding Zwift, which is a bike racing game you train on in the winter for racing bikes, for cycling and things. And this is what's left over from my little nutrition supplement that I ride on during the bike. There's a little bit left, so I'm just going to go ahead, toss it in the small glass, and finish it up while I'm live streaming. Okay, so let me take that like that. And then let me add these vertices into the mix. And then we'll bring that back there. Let me deselect these, and then I will bring this out like that. So there we go. Just add a little bit more just random interesting little details to it. And then I think the last thing I'm going to do is add some beveling to get a little bit more, just something a little bit more going on with the edges of this mesh. So let me jump back into edit mode. We're going to select edge select mode, and before I do that, math thing. So I mention this all the time when I'm about to do beveling, is you have these scale numbers over here, which is part of the whole Blender math thing. You want to apply scale, do Control A, choose Apply Scale. That causes all these numbers to reset to 1. So when you do things like beveling and other mathematical operations inside Blender, you're going to get a actual result you want instead of something weird possibly happening. Because if those scale values are really out of whack, things like beveling as well as sculpting can have some really crazy stuff happen. Okay, I think that looks kind of just a little bit extra detail there. For the width, I'm just going to choose a number similar to what I just punched in. The reason is that way I can remember the number and apply it to all the other things about the bevel and get a nice uniform beveling going on. All right, so let me now select all of these features right here. Now the question is, that's not going to work because that beveling is kind of going into the wall. Blender, that could cause problems with 3D printing. So let me just pull that back a little bit. Okay, that'll work. So these guys are going to be 0.025 beveled. And then I will do the same thing over here. Just do some crazy beveling, pull it back with a corrected number. And there we go. Now you add some little angles, and it just makes everything look a little bit more interesting, the more angles like that you have. I probably should add something to the back. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy, because right now the back's just flat, which is boring. So how about we just do a bit more extruding and kind of make these little ribs extend a little bit out to the back. Really just like that. And I think what I will do then is, let's grab these features right here. Pull it down a little bit. The problem is I already beveled the front, or the front half. Now if I try to apply bevel to these, it's going to look a little odd right there, but let me see what happens, and I'll decide if I want to revert it or not. It might turn out okay. Okay, that doesn't look too bad at all. Good. I was a bit worried because sometimes if I was beveling like a corner piece where it already was beveled, sometimes it can do it just looks weird. But that doesn't look too bad right there. So you got something a little bit interesting going on in the back. And why don't I also add these little grooves here to the back as well, just to get some symmetry going. So I'm going to select these lines, or these edges right here. Let's move them in sort of a similar amount. Doesn't have to be exactly the same. That looks close enough. And then up here, let's drop these down. That looks a little, these little beveled areas look a little odd. Let me just do some additional manipulation with the vertices. That'll probably look all right. Yeah, so now I got some little more interesting texture on the front and the back. And now that I've got the basic wall segment, it's time to start building some like interconnect pieces. Whoops-a-doodle. Let's bring Blender back up. So what I mean by that is let me actually apply the mirror modifier. I think I'm good at this point. Actually, let me do this. I am going to duplicate this guy off, and we're going to call this one wall backup. That way I have like a backup of the wall. So if I ever want to go back and change something, I can. And then the other one, I will actually apply the mirror modifier. Okay, let's get off caps lock. And this is going to be wall segment. So I'm going to hide that one. This one here, I will apply the mirror modifier. Okay. So what I need to do, let's create I'm thinking how I want to design. We probably need so we need several corner pieces, right? We probably need a 90 degree, like a 45 degree. Probably just do 90 and 45 to start. I mean, I could do like a 30 and a 60 as well. They're really not that hard to actually create. So let me see what I'm going to do here. So what I want to do, let me start with this guy, and I'm going to rotate this one. Let's do a simple 90 degree one first. And what I think I will do for these is let me just kind of break off a chunk of this guy, and I'll start there. So let me just separate that off by its own. I am going to just delete this section here. Delete all that. You can see through it, which is a problem, but that is a fairly easy problem to solve. We just gotta fill in some faces. I will worry about this side in a moment. I will delete that little guy though. So what I need to have is essentially the same exact, let me set orange, there we go. Just setting the origin to the center of mass to make rotation a little bit nicer. So the idea is this will kind of come up against the piece wherever you're going to build your wall segment. And I am going to have some sort of design connection to hold these pieces relatively together. I was thinking a little bit about that. But before I kind of formally integrate something like that into the design, I want to do some test prints. And I just haven't had time to do that because my 3D printer is cranking out combat robot parts. This is actually a really old one, but for my little Antway combat robot. So once I'm done doing that, I'll go back with some PLA and run a few test prints of whatever connection system I decide to use for this particular piece. But okay, so I need to have that. And then what I need is the other, whoops. Yeah, that's actually what I want to do. Okay, so this is like 1/2 of our joint piece, and then I have the other one I'm going to rotate to the final. There we go. So that would be the other end piece, if that makes sense, the joint piece. So I basically have 2 end caps to the corner joint piece, whatever you want to call it. And I need to make them kind of overlap. Now, I'm thinking how big the challenge right here is how big to make this, because it matters if you want to be able to build a complete encircled fortress on your battlefield with the walls. If you don't do that, it doesn't really matter. But they need to be, especially if you want to start mixing the 90-degree and 45-degree angles together, they need to be certain. There's a math there that I will honestly probably work out later. That's what I was talking a little bit about at the start. So for now, I think I'm just gonna overlap these corners like that. Let's join these two things together. And then if I go into edit mode, I should be able to merge these vertices right down the middle here. I should merge 4 of them. And let me do the mesh clean up, merge by distance again. Removed 74 vertices. That is definitely incorrect. So let me do 0.001. 8 vertices is still incorrect. So let's do 0.001. Still 8 vertices. Okay, so if I go to 0.000, whatever, I divide by 10 again, I am down to removing only 4 vertices, which I assume, let me just confirm that they are not the 4 vertices that I want to remove. I wonder what I removed. Weird. Okay, so let me just manually merge the vertices again, because it's not working super great right now. So let's just select both of them and choose merge at center. That is not merge at, okay. When I press M then C, it's merge at cursor, not merge at center. So it's MA to merge at center. Okay, and then let me go over here to view mode, get rid of whatever that thing is. When you start messing around with vertices, adding or deleting them, in particular merging and deleting them, it can mess up with this measure it plugin that I was using. Okay, so what I need to do now is start creating some faces. Now, if I did all that right, there should be no non-manifold vertices. Excellent. And I can now line up these pieces. So that one would sit somewhere around there. And this one would come up here and sit somewhere around here. And it would be possible to start building a complete wall around the base. Now, the only thing that kind of annoys me about this is if these end caps, these corner pieces have these 2 end caps here, that kind of messes up the equal spacing of everything. I don't know. That might bother me, that might not. I'm just kind of thinking about it. Oh, goodness. I'm not going to worry about it right now. We'll stick with it. If I decide later on, I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, maybe I'll do something about it. But I think for right now, I will keep it. I'm going to try one more crazy thing. And then I'll consider tonight's modeling session done here in a few minutes. I am going to duplicate this guy. Let me just move it out. Is there anything? Okay, I got to patch a giant hole here. Okay, so let me then take this, calculate normals. Actually, I want to break this out by itself. The reason I'm breaking it out by itself is because when you're in edit mode, it's kind of tricky to rotate things by a specific angle. So instead, I break the piece out by itself. I can then rotate it using the item thing. Of course, let me go back to move the origin back to the center of mass. I can set my angle that I want correctly, and then I can move it back in place to wherever I think it should be, whatever looks good. I can also move it relative to local axes, which you can't really do in edit mode. I don't know, that could be interesting. Let me stick with that for now. I've got plenty of time to figure out if I like that design or not. It is a little busy. Real busy. So that might end up looking different for the final piece. But anyway, that is about all I've got for you guys tonight. I was planning to jump on for about 40 minutes because I got other things I got to get done tonight. What time is it? 37 minutes. That's close enough. So I want to thank you guys all for watching. I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield. Let me just bring a couple of these guys over here, which are the miniatures from my current Kickstarter for Fractured Colony. It's a tabletop gaming miniature line that I'm working on. They're 3D printable gaming miniatures designed for FFF and FDM printers. The SAM site you saw sitting in the background over here, this guy is one of the miniatures slated to be in the next set, and then ideally these walls will be part of that set as well, but that's not 100% kind of finalized just quite yet. They're by default 32mm scale miniatures, but you can kind of print them out at different sizes however you see fit. And in addition to being designed for FFF 3D printers, the mentality is they're trying to print them with as minimal support as possible, so they are miniature kits. I think the Avalon here is like 20 some pieces. The Pitbull that I just had right up there is like 30 something, but a lot of those are little reactive armor packages you stick on the side. Which someone asked me, do you have reactive armor on the front of the vehicles? And at least on the Pitbull over here, I didn't really think about that when I was designing them, because it kind of should make sense. There should be some reactive armor in the front. But these little details right here actually are things you glue on, so you could not glue these things on, print off some more of these side reactive armor panels, and stick them on in the front if you wanted to get that look. They are somewhat customizable miniatures because, you know, it's 3D printing, do what you want. And the third miniature in the set, he's kind of hiding back here because he's tied up at the moment, but it is a little tiny AI-powered hunter-killer drone called the Lionel-class attack drone. And that is for this faction up here, which is the previous Kickstarter that I did about 1.5 years ago. It is like an anti-tank missile that they can fire from vehicles, sometimes artillery, or maybe even little infantry guys can carry it as well. And it just kind of flies up and wreaks havoc because it's AI-powered missiles. So with that, thank you guys all for watching. I think I introduced myself like 17 times already. I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield. And I will see you guys all next time, or check out the channel for other tabletop game related news and commentary and all that fun stuff. I've got some videos lined up in the not too distant future, doing some math for all this tariff stuff that's happening, how that may affect tabletop gaming prices for games that are manufactured in China, which out of random curiosity, because it's sitting here, I don't have my old person glasses on, so I gotta try to read it really far away. Distributed and imported by the... I wasn't sure if Star Wars Legion's new hard plastic miniatures are made in China, but it's probably on here somewhere. Yep, made in China. So a lot of games are made in China, so some of that 10% tariffs will affect prices. I'll break that down a little bit. And also, I finally got the news today that the Monster Apocalypse Kickstarter that I backed is officially trashed. So I'll be talking about that at some point in the not too distant future. Okay, for like the 4th time doing the Return of the King sign off. Thank you guys all for watching, and I will see you all next time.